Hello and welcome to another drive-in double feature where we review a movie every Tuesday and Thursday. I'm Ryan.
I'm Nathan.
Continuing Anime Week, we will be doing Vampire Hunter D. It predates Akira. It's probably a really influential movie if you're like an anime fan in like the early 90s, mid 90s, something like that, because I think a lot of Blockbuster videos had this video in their anime section, or
another one of those like quintessential like animes they had in the section.
There wasn't many. No, yeah. I mean, I remember, I think Akira was there, Ghost in the Shell, maybe this one. I don't recall it enough, but actually I went back and I listened to a lot of reviews about this movie, and there was a lot of people like older anime fans now that this was one of their first animes that they saw.
Oh, that's really cool. I could see that, right? Like, because I think this is part of, you know more about this than I do, but OVA, where like they would release like animes straight to VHS rather than like through like a TV series or something.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a one-off thing where it's not really a part of like a particular series, or it's like a continuation of a series, but it's not like a full series run.
Yeah, so I could see that just getting a release. I wonder what the 80s dub sounds like. We did watch the sub for this episode. I bet you that dub that all those anime fans were watching back in the day was not the best.
So I did watch it, and the sub version. And definitely not as good as the sub. I will say that it's not god awful or anything like that. It's not like the Akira dub where it's so outrageous. It's just very boring. Gotcha. It's a very boring dub where a lot of monotone voices, and like Vampire Hunter D is just kind of like, hey, when did you get this bite mark on your neck? And Dracula, or not Dracula, Magnus Lee, the vampire character in this one, he's like, my darling, I love you so much.
Oh, he does the accent?
Yes, he does.
Love it.
But yeah, so I mean, basic plot point is girl gets bitten by a vampire, a local vampire, and she employs the services of a vampire hunter named D, and they try to kill a vampire.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple premise. I actually really like the premise. I like how it's set up. I think that opening sequence is really neat, where there's like no dialogue, but it's like she's like hunting down like these weird looking creatures. Like they are freaky looking, and then she becomes a vampire there, and then so she doesn't become a vampire, they have to kill the main vampire hunter. And I feel like this whole beginning sequence just sets up the vibe of the movie. Tons of blood. For some reason, there's tons of upskirts. That just is anime, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it just sets it up.
Yes, I really love the opening to it. It was almost reminded me. So have you played Ninja Gaiden, right, for the NES? You remember like those little cutscenes that they would have in between? It reminded me a lot of that type of stuff, where it's just these really silent pieces where it's somebody like running really fast or doing an attack. It reminded me of that type of stuff.
No, I could definitely see that. I wonder if there was some kind of inspiration there. But yeah, no, it feels just like really like aesthetically pleasing, and the action's just really solid. Just to say, this movie is wacky. This movie is like, it has so much going on in it for such a like short runtime. It's really cool. A lot of like the character design, a lot of like bloody deaths. There's like a hand. There's a hand with a damn face on it in this movie.
Did they really explain that at all?
No. From what I remember being like, because like there's a scene between the vampire hunter and our main woman, and she's like, he like scares her with his hand that has like a face on it, and I was like, what the hell was that? And then it comes back like a little bit, but it's never explained.
So I'm assuming the big plot twist of this movie is that D is actually a Dampeel, which is a half human, half vampire. So he doesn't have vampire weaknesses, a lot of them, but he still has like superpowers. So he's like half human, but with powers. And he's got a little face on his hand, and he like grabs Doris, the main female character, and it knocks her out. he's got like special powers that puts her to sleep. There's one scene where Dee gets horribly beaten, like almost at the point of death.
Mm-hmm.
And the hand kind of drags the body and starts eating dirt to...
What was that?
Like,
what was...
just imagine your hand grabbing handfuls of dirt, and it just... your palm of your hand is just eating it.
Yeah, it's stuff like that I was watching. I was like, okay, this is really cool because, like, it's so creative. You know, I would have never thought of that in my life, and it's crazy that somebody thought about a hand just eating dirt to power up. So it's wild to me that this movie is set in the future. It has this very retro Castlevania look, right? That's what it reminds me of, because it even has a whip in it. But it's set like I didn't write down the year, but it's like set in like the far, far off future.
The year is 12,090.
Yeah, 12,090. And humans are still alive and well, just with a bunch of weirdo creatures around.
Well, yeah, so it's set up like Castlevania. So there are these really old looking castles, and they're kind of dressed like they would be like in the 1800s, something like that, where they have like peasants' clothes or anything like that. But they also have ray guns and large metal structures and robots and cyborg horses. So
yeah,
just whatever they want to put in there, it's there.
I think they set it so far in the future that they could literally just do whatever they wanted to do in the movie. I really like, so kind of, it makes sense in like vampire lore. The head vampire, you know, the lead, he's very, very old. He's a really neat character. I liked his character. He has like a speech towards the end where he talks about like, oh, do you know what living forever is like? It's boring. You know, it's very boring. And it was like, okay, I like that. It was very serious. It was interesting.
Yeah, he's not evil for the sake of being evil. He's just kind of, he's so bored with his life that these are the only cheap thrills that he gets out of life now, just kidnapping young women and trying to marry them.
Yeah, and then getting this vampire hunter, you know, facing off against him. The vampire hunter Dee is also really cool. He does like a really great scene against our main bad guy, where he like throws a knife at his eye, and like the main bad guy like pulls it out, yanks his eye out, and then it grows, because you know he's a vampire. He just heals right back up, and his eye goes back and heals. It's stuff like that I really enjoyed about this movie, because it just did all these weird things.
Yeah, one thing I liked. I really like that scene a lot too, especially him pulling the knife out of his eye, because it's so graphic. And another one was he's fighting another vampire character, and this guy, he's got like a giant sling looking blade. He goes to stab him, and the knife, his sword hits the vampire, but the sword actually comes out of Vampire Hunter D, and it's because the vampire is able to manipulate space. So whenever he gets hit by an attack, which he should use that attack a lot more. He only used it the one time, but
yeah.
But it's funny because D was like, "Oh yes, I've heard of you, the one that can manipulate space." And I was like, "Is that really well known?"
Everybody around here knows it. They have a name specifically for vampire aristocrats. It definitely like plays on that, where it's like, oh, all of the aristocrats are evil kind of deal. And, you know, there's even like a female like a vampire who, come to find out, is like half vampire, half human, and she struggles with that because everybody else is a plebeian to her, but she's also part plebeian, so she's conflicted.
Yeah, they kind of play off the fact that vampires are very rich people. They live in high society, or they're royalty. And the vampire's daughter in this movie is so appalled with the fact of her father trying to marry a peasant girl. Just she's totally disgusted by it. And then but then towards the end, it's revealed that her mother was a peasant and she is half human, and she refuses to believe that all the way till like the end of the movie, despite all the evidence pointing towards it. She still says, "No, I'm a full-blooded vampire."
Yeah, and she like dies for her cause. Like she just like, all right, well, I guess it's over now. That there's like a side character who's like a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Did you care about this character at all up until like there's a certain scene where I think everything changes, but there was something about him I just like forgot he was even a character while watching the movie.
Well, at first, because he shows up in the very beginning of the movie when the whole town, it's revealed that Doris has been bitten by the vampire, and he's kind of there because at first they're like, oh, we have to put Doris in an insane asylum. She's going to be crazy. And the doctor's like the one human there that says, no, we can't put people there. They will die. They'll go insane. It's just, you can't do that. So the doctor's kind of there just to provide support. But yeah, he doesn't really play a role until much later in the movie where he gets turned into a vampire and he tries to kidnap Doris to take back to Dracula. Or the vampire, not Dracula.
Yeah,
I keep wanting to call him Dracula.
He pretty much should be. He's pretty much Dracula. He fits that role, right?
Right. Well, they didn't say this in the Japanese subbed version.
Okay.
So at the end of the movie, we already know Dee is half vampire, half human. So towards the end of the movie, it's kind of revealed that Dee, they look at this painting and it looks like Dee's ancestor, and it's apparently a really famous vampire, and they call him the ancient god in the sub, but in the dub version they say, "Oh, you're a descendant of Count Dracula."
They would do that. That Americans just have to like. I feel like they definitely were like, "Yeah, we got to throw Dracula in here somehow."
So that's why I keep saying it, and but yeah, going back to the doctor, he betrays Doris, and he starts saying some really revolting stuff like, "Oh, I should have slept with you when I had the chance." And
God, it was rough. Like I felt betrayed in that scene because the reveal was really cool. Because like he's like, oh, he like turns around and he's showing his like nasty teeth, and it's like, oh crap, he's a vampire too. And of course, so I texted you this. I was like, there's a very common theme with every anime movie that we've covered so far. And there's always like a boob shot in all of these movies. Oh. And this one's very similar to the one we just did on Tuesday, where a shirt gets torn and it shows boobs that way. Because that's our main character that happens to her. And a very like not needed scene other than like just to serve that point. I don't know why they felt the need to do that. I mean, I can kind of understand why they did it in Akira, because it's supposed to be like this biker gang, and you figure they're going to do something terrible to this woman, which they do. But it doesn't really happen. Like the character that does rip the girl's shirt off really has no intentions of doing anything like that. Yeah, he's just doing it, right?
Well, he's just doing it. Yeah, he's just doing it to rip off the crucifix that's hanging from her neck.
Yeah.
But then later, they just had to throw in a really gratuitous shower scene too in this movie.
Of course.
Just because it's the 80s and they have to have a gratuitous shower scene.
Yeah, that's another very common thing, even in our live action movies. Just shower scenes. I don't know why.
And it didn't even advance the plot or anything. It's just a girl standing in a shower.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what you're going to get out of like sleazy movies. Because I mean, that's what this movie's a little sleazy. And, that's something that's enjoyable about it. It's very violent. It's got like the nudity. It's got really good action. But what I think makes it stand out is like the creatures and stuff like that. It's got a lot of really cool stuff. Like there's a 3-headed like snake monster that pops up at one point. That has some really cool animation to it.
Who was also topless at one point.
Yes, yeah. That one, I'll give it to you. It's like an ancient creature, whatever. Everyone in Greek times was nude. And that's just a fact.
Sure.
Yeah.
But no, I like that creature. There's a werewolf that pops up at one point, which the werewolf shows up early in the movie. And did the werewolf show up again? I don't remember the werewolf showing up again.
I don't think so.
They imply the werewolf was working with the vampire, because the werewolf also takes off the woman's crucifix so that way the vampire can bite her neck, and then you don't ever see the werewolf again. There's another creature that's like a witch kind of character that's got like giant red eyes and orange hair, and is able to summon like a ghost wolf or something like that, and it bites off Dee's arm, and Dee's able to grow his arm back.
Yes, that's right. Oh God, I feel like so much happens in this movie. Like, even though that there is a lot of scenes in this where kind of nothing happens, because like Dee is our silent protagonist. You know, he doesn't talk a lot. Well, he ends up talking more as the movie goes on, but there's a lot of scenes where he's silent and people are just kind of talking to him, and or rather, I should say, at him, and he's kind of just sitting there reacting. But like, other than those scenes, I feel like this movie is constantly going.
It is. It's not a boring movie by any means. It's not. I will say it's not a great one.
Oh God, no.
It's not great. It's good. It's good. Nothing amazing or anything like that. But at the same time, I have to kind of put into context a little bit, just because this is compared to now and what we've seen and how anime is so far evolved. This is almost like just from like another era. It's nothing the animation's not as fluid. I mean, even compared to Akira, which Akira was a multi-million-dollar movie. Yeah. And that was 4 years, I believe, or 3 years afterwards.
Yeah.
And even that is just so far advanced, but you could just tell that they had way more money involved.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I mean, you have to take this stuff at like face value, kind of. Like, it's not a great movie by any standards, but I enjoyed it because I thought it was a fun experience. You had to understand it was straight to VHS. They probably were working on a much tighter budget, but the charm is still there, and I think that's what's important about it.
I just kind of put it in my perspective. So imagine you're an 80s kid and your consumption of cartoons is, G.I. Joe, He-Man, just real over the top type of real cartoony, family friendly type stuff where nothing really bad happens. And just imagine, I believe this came out on VHS in America in the 90s, 93, I want to say. So imagine renting this from the video store and you think you're getting like a vampire movie for maybe like G.I. Joe or something, and then it's just there's a monster getting sliced in half, or there's a dinosaur's head being chopped off. So it's just
in the first 5 minutes there's like blood spouting out of like a creature's head. I'm sure if I was a kid in 93 and I picked this up, I would have thought this ruled. It would have probably made me an anime fan for life. Like, I'm sure it was life changing.
And that's how a lot of people do get started in anime. They get that first taste, like in the 90s, and then you have to kind of go back and see what else can I get. I was actually listening to a guy. So like I said, I listened to some reviews leading up to this point because I wanted proper context going into this. Mm-hmm. That there was a guy that actually worked at a Blockbuster, and he had the ability to order movies. So he ordered every single anime movie he could order, and that way he could rent it for free. And Vampire Hunter D was one of the movies that he ordered.
Oh, that's awesome, because I'm sure that stuff was not cheap to like import or buy all of. So that's cool that he had the chance at the time. Yeah.
At the time, so I can give you a little bit of context just of my age. There was an anime shop that we would actually go to when I was a kid growing up called Green Dragon. Mm-hmm. And they had all types of stuff in there from Japan. I mean, they had swords and all kinds of other random stuff, but they also had an actual, you can buy anime DVDs or even rent them from there as well. They had a section where you could buy them or rent them. And there were some VHS tapes you could buy. And I remember I bought a VHS of this one show I liked called Ranma 1/2. And so there's only, right. So it was a VHS, and I could tell you that there's maybe like 2-3 episodes on there. Not a whole lot, maybe like an hour's worth of content.
Yeah.
You want to know the price point?
Yeah, I do.
$40.
Wow, and that's in like, was it the 90s when you were buying this?
That was most likely like 2002.
2002. Yeah, I mean, still like that's still like gonna go up in price now. Like, wow, that's crazy. I mean, that's the way it was, especially in the VHS era. Because I think of like you'd buy Star Trek on VHS and be 2 episodes on like one VHS. You know, like
oh yeah,
that's just how that's what a different time.
I remember like even on VHS you could buy, because during when Friends was starting to actually release, you could buy like season 1 of Friends on DVD, or you can buy the entire first season on VHS. And it was just crazy. You could spend like, oh yeah, it's like $150 to own every single Friends episode from season 1 on VHS.
Or you could just get a nice little mini pack DVD. No wonder DVD like took waves right at its launch.
Yeah. So it was just from a different time, and you know, there's some really cool stuff in there. I remember watching a lot of really cool stuff even back then, and I don't know, it gets me really nostalgic watching stuff like this, thinking of like old anime.
Yeah, I know. Not to like even to go on too much longer, but it like kickstarted memories in my mind, like the old school animation of anime. Because you know, when you're a kid, you kind of just watch anime, and sometimes you don't even know it. Like there's like a Christian anime called Superbook that I watched as a kid. It was dubbed. My grandparents had VHS tapes of it for some reason. And yeah, this movie specifically, I was watching, it's like, oh yeah, I used to watch that, and I had to look it up, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is it. So, you know, it brings back some good memories, I guess.
It's weird how what you discover is actually anime, and you watch it. Like Speed Racer is technically an anime.
Yeah, but I watched Speed Racer as a kid.
But you know, you don't think of it as an anime. But yeah, it is. So. But going back to this movie, one of the heavy influences of this movie is not necessarily the Dracula movie that Todd Browning made or the novel, but I was reading an interview that the original creator of this was actually heavily inspired by the Hammer version of Dracula.
Yeah.
And you can automatically know that because the vampire in this movie is named Magnus Lee, aka Christopher Lee, who played Dracula in the Hammer movies.
And I think sometimes they just call him Lee as well. So it like fits into that Christopher Lee aesthetic very, very well.
They always say the Lee family is held in high regard.
They are.
They are. And those are, I think we've talked about this, but I almost prefer the Hammer movies over a lot of the Universal ones. So
yeah. I think the first Dracula movie is better than the first Universal one. I mean, nobody can beat Bela Lugosi, but Christopher Lee does get very close, I think.
Exactly. And a movie as a whole, it's stronger, but as a character, Bela Lugosi is stronger.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, I could see it being more influential as far as, you know, there's blood in like the Hammer, there's a little bit more violence, a little more sexual like stuff. So I could see it being more of an impact towards something like this.
Right. And so like in the original Dracula novel, Dracula had all these crazy powers that he could do. He could transform. He could walk out in the sunlight. It's funny because the original Dracula book didn't follow by the classic vampire rules. Yeah. Those really weren't established until the Hammer movies, really, that actually, you know, you can't go out in the sunlight, crosses, stake to the heart, those type of things.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of see where they brought in their influences, because bright lights do affect vampires in this movie as well.
Yeah. This one pretty much follows those rules, which I love. There's just something about like classic vampire rules. You know, you can go into a vampire movie and know what you're getting with some of it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't know. It adds a charm to it.
Not a super complicated story. Great action scenes, and let's say give it a watch. Yeah.
Oh yeah. If this sounded interesting to you, give it a watch. I think it's fun, especially if you're a fan of like anime and you've never seen this. Yeah, check it out. It's pretty neat for its time.
Yeah, absolutely. But Nathan, we're going to shut the book on Anime Week. It was a fun week, but we actually are going to have another theme week next week. So Nathan, why don't you let our audience know what it's going to be?
Yeah, so next week, it's going to be Chuck's week, specifically Chuck Norris. It's going to be all of his movies. And then the first one of the week on Tuesday is going to be Firewalker from 1986, starring Chuck Norris and Louis Gossett Jr. So I'm excited to give that one a watch.
Yep, and it is free on Tubi, so be sure to watch that. Totally free. Mm-hmm. But if you have any thoughts, opinions that you'd like to share with us, any other movies you'd like to talk about or anime memories, please email us at drivein-doublefuturepodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at DIDFpod as well. But until next time.